Hi, and welcome back. My name is Sue, and welcome to my craft room with today's inspiration, my flowers. For today's card, I'm using Gina K stamps, and I'm going to color with my Prismacolor pencils in greens and pinks to match my flowers. I cut a piece of heavyweight prickly pear cardstock from Gina K to an A2 size card, and I'm using that as my base. When creating your card base, go ahead and score it 4 1/4 and then flip the card over and put it up to the edge on your score buddy and then press down. You'll get a nice clean fold and it will be even on both sides. This gives you a nice clean edge for your card. Then I put the stamp on the front of the card and I'm kind of centering it between the top and the bottom. Kind of want it in the center since I'm not using a layered card. I'm putting it right on the card base. Then I stamp with the Gina K black, which now I think she calls it black onyx, but mine's older. And then I pressed it down with my wonderful pencil sharpener and floor pad. And then after I did the stamping, then I started to do the coloring, and I picked these 2 greens just to get started for the leaves. I'll be honest, this took a long time. Actually, it was over almost an hour for all the coloring, but so I've sped it up for this video. But here I'm just laying down the greens, and I started with the lightest and then I brought in the dark for the veining of the leaf and around the shading of it under where it's underneath the other flowers. And then I just go back and forth between those two, and with using the Prismacolors, it starts out very light coloring. The lighter you go, the more layers you could put on. So I did that. I started very light and just kept building up darker and darker. And then I wanted some highlight, so I added this light color to it. It's not real predominant, but as I go through and keep adding more and more layers, I'm able to add more of those highlights and the dark shading. Like here, you can see the pencil coloring with the Prismacolors is not like alcohol markers. You have to go with little sections at a time and build up. It takes quite a bit longer to do it, but the results, I think, are worth it. It's time consuming as you're coloring. It's just going over and over and over and over the same colors. And I brought in the light, the dark, and the medium. And here I added chartreuse, kind of thinking that I would get more of a highlight of what I wanted. It didn't really do anything on this leaf, but I kept it around, and I may go back in and highlight more. But I wanted to get the coloring that I was looking for, so I just kept building it up more and more. For this one, I started with this green on the beginning of it, and then I went with the chartreuse, figuring it would have more of a light hitting it. And again, I put it on the tip, thinking that the light from wherever it comes from would hit the tip of the leaf. I ended up just coloring over it, and it was too bright. That chartreuse was just too bright for the card. It didn't go well on the prickly pear cardstock, in my opinion. So I went back with the dark, I think it's called the, what I used for grass green. Oh no, for the dark one, I used dark green. And then I was using the dark green Prismacolor, which is number 908, and then I use Kelly Green, which is the number PC1096, and then for the light one that I had originally was the Sap Green Light, number 120. I do end up adding more greens than just those 3, just to make the leaf more alive. I found those 3 didn't really bring it to life, so I add some more shading from different greens. I end up adding grass green, and there you can see I'm adding more of the chartreuse, which is number PC, oh, I can't read the number anymore, but it's the chartreuse. And then here I started with the chartreuse first, thinking that would be the answer, and then adding the Kelly green lightly through it. The chartreuse at this point for that little section vein didn't really show up as much as it did on that other leaf on the tip. It's there, but it didn't quite do it what I was thinking it would do. So I went back with the dark green, thinking that I can go over the chartreuse and it would just be a little highlight coming through. Again, I was just playing around with the leaves and all the different greens that I ended up using just to keep adding layers and layers on top of it until I got the right, I don't know, there's probably a word, I could never think of the words, but until I got the right shade and the right depth that I was looking for. The prickly pear, I think, was actually throwing the greens off, and I should have used that as a highlight here, because I think that prickly pear would have been a nice highlight color instead of picking the chartreuse and the other colors. I think I could have left that shining through the cardstock and making the leaves that way. Here I used the dark green for the stem of the flower, trying to stay consistent with the greens. I could have used any other color, but since I had it here on the desk, I went and used that one for the greens. Now I did go in with, I thought I was going to go in with the sage, pale sage, and I decided not to do that. And I started using the colors for the flowers. Here I started out with mulberry, and then I added pink. I was thinking of using processed red, but I opted not to use that and just stick with the mulberry and the pinks. So I did the mulberries on the end and then the mulberries on the tip, because that's how my flowers looked in my vase. The vase has a little bit of green on the bottom of the flower, so I started to use the sage, the chartreuse, but I didn't like the sage. Was it the sage or the sap? I didn't like that color, so I ended up switching it over, and all the base of the leaves I ended up using olive green, and then I went back to coloring with the pink and the mulberry, and that was something I just went back and forth. I did the mulberry on the tips, and then so I have the olive green on the bottoms where it was, then I go to the mulberry for the tips, and then the pink. And then for the highlights, I brought in all the white flowers. I did the white highlight on all of the leaves for that. And sorry if you hear my grandfather clock going in the background. Then I did, like I said, I have the highlight for that, for each flower to kind of brighten those up. Now in the lower flower, I didn't use the highlight. I left the prickly pear showing through, and that kind of brought its own highlight. I tried to use the white on the green leaves. That didn't do it. I ended up using the colorless blender to see if that would do it, and I didn't like it, so I actually went back with the greens and darkened that up. Since I had the stamp and the Misty still, I added some gold metallic, thinking it would bring a little bit more shimmer and shine to the stamp. It's hard to see, so I probably wouldn't do it again. I'd probably use gold embossing instead. To create a frame around the flowers, I took a die and I put it on my magnetic sheet so it would stay, and then I traced the inside and the outside with a gold pen, kind of giving it that framed look without having any bulk to the card. And here's where I'm left-handed, so I try it with my right hand to do the opposite side. Not easy when you're left-handed. It's hard to see, so I probably should have used a thicker gold marker instead of this one. I added the sentiment stamps Hello and Sweet Friend. Thank you for joining me today in my craft room. Please like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it.